Hi everyone, Michael here. It's Tuesday afternoon, a little after 3 o'clock. Really excited to be talking to everyone and giving an update on our planning process. Wanted to just note a couple things. The first is that I would love to be in a place where here's the plan, we're done, we have everything figured out. That's not the case. We wanted to get something out to people now for two reasons. First, because we know there's probably a lot of anxiety. So at least being in a place where we can share the big rocks of our plan is going to be super helpful. The second reason is because we know that despite having a lot of people at the table for our planning, we don't have everyone. We don't have all the perspectives that we need in the room. So we want to gather some input. I'll note I'm on my third, fourth take here. And I keep running out of time, so I'm going to try to move a little bit faster this time, so I may skip some things. I'll also email these slides. So, as I said, we're going to start by reviewing the district and state guidance so that we know what we're tight on and what's really out of our control. We're going to share the SHS plan as we have it and share how to give some input on that. I'm going to start by quickly walking through the process at a district level. We've looked at, in our supplemental service areas, food service, human resources, health and safety, transportation, what is possible, and more importantly, what isn't possible. What can't we do in this COVID situation? Then we're coming with a proposal to our community in four areas: continuity of learning, conditions for learning, policy and funding, leadership and planning. So those are the core operational services. Now we're moving pretty soon into a vetting stage where we're getting feedback on our plan from a variety of groups, from students, from families, from the associations, and from some regional groups to ensure regional coherence. And then we're going to be in a place where within the next few weeks we're going to be communicating and operationalizing a plan at the school level. At the school, we've been working on a reopening since May. We started by having staff write down all the questions that they had and that we needed to answer. We did lots of collating of those. We built a reopening steering committee of about 10 to 15 staff members with different roles. That group has worked hard to build an action plan and have some small groups working in different areas, from things like our daily health check procedure to our approach to advisory over the first few weeks to our tech tools that will support our work. We're now in a place where we're ready to vet those plans with our different stakeholders, knowing that we're going to gather input. We're not going to be done. We're going to turn that around, we're going to refine, and be in a place by early August to communicate a finalized plan. Wanted to share these principles. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go through them one by one, but I would just note that as you think about feedback, know that we're going to do our best to hold to these principles. So the more that the feedback can be aligned to these areas, that will fit within our existing value system and will be most helpful for adjustments. Wanted to take us quickly through the state approach, starting with some vocabulary. Schools will be in step 1, step 2, or step 3 at given points throughout the year, and we don't necessarily make that determination. In step 1, that's where we were from March to June. Schools are closed to in-person instruction. Step 2, they're open with enhanced physical distancing and safety protocols. And step 3 is moving closer to normal. They're open, but there are still some physical distancing requirements in place. As of now, we're planning to open in step 2 with the exception of transportation, which per state guidance is opening in step 3. Things that are tight from the state that we have no control over are that there's a daily health check for all school personnel. And I would say that even though we have no control, many of these we agree with and are certainly supportive of. Daily health check at the first point of contact. If you're symptomatic, if you have a fever, if you've been exposed to somebody known to have COVID, you'll be sent home, and that's true for students and staff. There's minimal public access to the school. At SHS, that will probably be pretty close to no public access to the school. Hand washing at lots of different points during the day. Required face coverings, with exceptions made only for medical purposes. High-touch surfaces disinfected 3 times per day. Avoid sharing supplies. One of the big ones is keep groups isolated from each other wherever possible. So like a pod approach, although the guidance does helpfully state that that should be addressed differently at high schools. We need to maintain records of our contacts. Only offer field trips if we're able to maintain the guidance that exists in schools. We're required to offer school meals. Those will likely not take place in the cafeteria, even in step 3. And music and PE, those are high transmission areas, so they may look different. At the district level, 4 areas that have been shared as tightness. One is we're going to follow all CDC VDH guidelines. Those are not optional for us. Safety remains our top priority in our reopening work. We're going to ensure that our learners furthest from opportunity are given those additional supports that they need to ensure success. And most consequentially, probably, is that we'll be using a hybrid model, that we will have physically distanced classrooms, and that will provide continuity of education for kids learning outside of their classrooms. So that sort of lays out where the district is and where the state is. So now we're going to talk about the things that our proposal as a school. So these are the areas that are, we've done lots of thinking on, and we feel like we're headed in the right direction, but we need feedback. So Google Classroom will remain our base platform for delivery of assignments and resources, and we'll continue to use Google Meet for video conferencing. Again, this is step 1. Step 1 being closed to in-person instruction. We are going to plan for a small Canvas pilot that we would eventually like to expand if it goes well as our LMS. We will use an adjusted, shorter schedule. We struggled with particularly morning classes, so we're looking at a window from 9 to 2:30, or perhaps an even shorter window where high school students are learning mostly in the afternoon hours. Our reopening team is going to discuss that on Tuesday. Teachers are going to have instructional contact with their students 2 times per week for 1 credit courses. So 1 time per week for half credit courses. That's a minimum, not a maximum. We're going to require a weekly planner, and that's going to need to be shared with families. We are going to work to try to build that from Classroom directly using the tool that Jim started for us last year. It came up from families a lot that it was useful to have that planner sent directly to them. Wednesdays will be structured similar to how Fridays were this last round. We won't have regular classes. We'll have flex in the morning and time for teacher prep in the afternoon. A change that we're making is that, last time we really reduced the expectations for the amount of work that students would produce. And while we still want to maintain a focus on those essential performance indicators, we want to make sure that our courses are as rigorous as they would be in person, or as close to it as we can go. We'll still run our intervention and support courses as a way of providing support for academic classes. Another shift is that we're going to use regular office hours to do our best to avoid having teachers feel like they need to support students at all hours of the day and students feeling like they can access their teachers at all hours of the day. So we're really trying to provide balance with that and having those held before 4:30. Teachers will use the same synchronous schedule in almost all cases. So if your schedule is I meet with all my students Monday and Wednesday, and then Monday and Thursday, and then Tuesday and Friday are asynchronous, great. If it is something where you meet with all your kids on Monday and then small groups Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, we want to keep that generally the same, although we will be open to adjustments to that on an as-needed basis. We'll be taking attendance in every class, even on our non-in-person days. So even if you're not meeting with your class synchronously, you'll take attendance based on whether they are engaging in the work from class. We'll continue with a daily in-person advisory or an advisory check-in, although we're going to encourage daily advisory. So this is our approach right now to step one. None of this is set in stone. So these are the areas that we'd ask for feedback on in particular. Moving to step two, again, these are the things that we're sorting out and we're looking for feedback on. So this is where we're open with enhanced distancing expectations. So we're going to run a schedule that starts at 8 a.m. With health checks taking place for that first half hour of the day. Half the students are going to be in on Monday, Thursday, other half Tuesday, Friday. Right now that would be by last name. Students, when the days that they're not in school, are going to be given some clear parameters for what they should be doing on their non-school days, whether that's practice or reading or accessing some sort of resources online. Again, this is something that's like a big rock of the district process, and we haven't been told for sure to proceed with it, but we anticipate that direction will come out by the end of the week for sure. And within classes, and this is sort of the rationale for the hybrid, we're going to have 6-foot distancing in place, so kids will be spread out throughout the building, throughout their classrooms, so that we can keep kids 6 feet apart. Frankly, you just can't do that with 20 kids in a room. We'll have daily health screenings for bus riders when they're on the bus, and for other students we'll have a couple of different entrances based on their grade level to receive their screening. Required facial coverings, that one's actually pretty tight. One-way hallways, that's an encouragement. We're going to try to make that work at SHS. Lunches are going to be in advisories. We are going to need to provide coverage to ensure a duty-free lunch for staff. Students won't eat in the cafe, but they'll be able to go down to get their lunch and then come back to their advisory rooms, working on the logistical structure there. And we're going to encourage non-bus transportation. We're working really hard to build out the opportunity for in-person tutoring for students on their out days. So if you're a Monday, Thursday kid, you would have the opportunity to come in on an as-needed basis on Tuesday, Friday to get tutoring, and that would be staffed by non-classroom teachers. Again, lunch is an advisory classroom. I'm not sure why that was repeated. 1 day a week, currently looking at Wednesdays, we would have flexible learning in the mornings, whether that's in person or virtual will probably depend on how many students are in a full remote setting. And time for teacher prep and collaboration. Daily advisory, so you'll see each of your advisees 2 days a week, 1 day for regular advisory with a social emotional check-in, discussion, and then a structured study block on the other one. We're going to have an option for a full remote experience, and this is going to be a big question that we're still trying to answer, is how we support students who, for medical purposes, are learning fully remote or based on a parent preference, are not attending school. We're going to have certainly a day-long orientation and a welcome back in advisories, where we will have at least 1 day, probably the first full day, we're thinking would be in advisory. We're going to make sure that we're providing training in the platforms that we're going to use in the event that we need to go remote, and we'll provide guidance for folks around that. And we're going to do our best to balance easing kids into the routine of school and getting into academics. And I don't know that we'll have a lot of tightness on that, but we want to make sure that we don't rush back into academics and really make sure that we're checking in with our kids and seeing how they're doing, getting them acclimated to some of the new routines. Want to be thoughtful about workday considerations and to share some of those. And I'll have you read those there. I'm getting low on time again. And then our big remaining questions: what's the process for opting in? How are we going to help kids who are fully remote? And how are we going to conduct those courses that are laid out in the guidelines as having particular concerns about transmission? So you'll see we have some staff forums coming up. There's a URL to give your input on what's been shared. And please consider setting up a meeting with one of us to discuss your thoughts and concerns. And hopefully by working together, we can all get this right. finishing with 2 seconds left to go. Thanks, everyone.